In 2004, the US-American amusement park corporation Six Flags sold its European theme parks. This was a measure put in place to prevent the company from undergoing bankruptcy, which ended up happening anyway, so why bother? But this also meant that the branding that these parks had before being acquired was reintroduced. From then onwards, Walibi Belgium, Walibi Holland, Walibi Rhône-Alps and Walibi Sud-Ouest would operate with their original names, themes, and while having to deal with Six Flags' junk. But of course, this would also reintroduce the park chain's original mascot, the Walibi Kangaroo. The orange mammal was introduced shortly after the first Walibi park opened in Walibi Belgium in 1975, and has pretty much remained the same since then. This would finally change, however, in the early 2010s, which is when Walibi would briefly turn into the leader of an iconic rock group. This is the history of the Walibi Adventure Band. 2006. The World Cup held in Germany was won by Italy. The Eurovision Song Contest held in Athens was won by Demons. And when I was born, and also when the company Deshalb would gain ownership of the Walibi parks, which is when the inception of what I will from now on be referring to as Rockstar Walibi essentially began. It all boiled down to these three people: Delphine Pont, Serge Naim and Ophélie Barrière. Early on, they immediately had interest in the persona of Walibi and saw the potential in him to become something more than just an average theme park mascot. They wanted to evolve him into a brand of its own, something that would be recognizable even outside the parks. To achieve this, the decision was made to focus on music as the base subject.
La musique, de toute évidence, est le point de convergence, le point de rencontre de toute la famille.
In the middle of 2007, a meeting was held, together with animation studios, artists, and a creative team of the Walibi park chain, that would ultimately reveal the enormous scope of the final project. We're going to sit here for a while, just so you know, but with everything in place, development on the final product began. 2 years and 11 million euros was spent on getting everything finished and ready in time for the 2011 season. And on the 9th of April, the parks would open their gates to a without a doubt historic season. Parkgoers would find themselves in a completely different looking, music themed place, together with a completely new Walibi mascot and a brand new rock band. Walibi's own band, known as the Walibi Adventure Band or simply the WAB, consisted of 4 members, with Walibi himself being the star of the show, of course, acting as the lead e-guitarist and singer, but not as the lead singer. That honor would go to our first new character, Phoebe. No, not Phoebe. Phoebe. This ain't UK, we gotta keep things simple here. Then we had Haas, great name, I'm aware, and also bass player next to Walibi. And finally, there was Zenko, who was the drummer of the band. I hope you're proud of me, Zenko! Walibi himself received a complete redesign, now looking much more modern and human-like. And lastly, the band's soundtracks were of the pop-rock genre. So yeah, this was a very brief description of Walibi's new band, but this is also where the rabbit hole of this whole thing begins. You thought that one 4-member band was all the Imagineers contributed to the parks. Well, I think it's time to introduce you to Walibi's competition. And this is also where they ran out of good names, I think. This is Walibi's evil twin brother. His name is Squat, he looks like a carrot somebody's taken a bite out of, and he really likes breaking his neck. And while you're enjoying his walk of shame here, Squat's band only consisted of 3 members. And in contrast to the WAP, their songs consisted of a lot more brutal and darker rock music, which logically meant that they called themselves the SkunX. Smells good! Squat himself acted as the lead singer and lead e-guitarist. The rest of the group was made up by a bull, who played the drums, and a raven, who played the bass guitar, the keyboard, and also rapped on occasion. Their names, by the way, being Loco and Timotive. And yes, the bands actually had their own original music that was made exclusively for them. Now, as someone who has listened to a lot of very good music, what do I think of their soundtracks? Not bad, honestly. Sure, the soundtracks aren't groundbreaking, like, not at all. The music sounds a bit messy at times, and the lyrics are very simplistic. However, are they fun and entertaining to listen to? You bet! The songs from the WAP are all really sweet and powerful anthems of joy and happiness. And nowadays, super nostalgic to probably many people. Even to me, despite all of this never being a part of my childhood. On the other hand, the songs from the SkunX aren't so stellar. Sure, I still find them really fun, but that's because this is the stuff that guilty pleasure dreams are made of. And that is because as you listen to these wonderful soundtracks, you reach a whole new, ethereal purity of absolutely awful lyrics.
You ride a bike drive a tank. This is not your baby phone. I don't give a damn about your silly book of rules. So silly, we're gonna get some ass!
Oh, I thought this was supposed to be 100% PG. Never mind then. Also, here's Motif's rap part.
Get up early in the morning. You'll stay up all night. Doesn't matter if the gang is starting. You gotta do your homework right.
Okay, let's stop that. As you have probably seen by now, the mascots could also be found within the parks in the form of walk-around characters. When they weren't roaming around the park freely soaking everyone with water guns, the bands would frequently host a variety of musical performances, held in different venues or right on the street. The most notable show was the Music Battle Show, in which both bands would compete against each other, attempting to find out who the better band is. To keep the audience impressed throughout the shows, the key element used here were acrobatics. Not only did this mean that the actors portraying the characters had to be of athletic nature, but also that the costumes had to be designed with flexibility in mind, to allow for such movements to be possible. Most of the costumes used heads with movable mouths to make it look more like the characters were actually speaking and singing during the shows. The costumes' heads were also dependent on the head shape of the actor wearing it. And I'm sorely mentioning this because this made Walibi look horrible at times. Remember when I said that one of the goals of the original developers was to evolve Walibi into a character that was well represented and known even outside of the respective amusement parks? Well, on some occasions, the bands would hold concerts on stages and events outside of the parks. However, this wasn't the only measure taken to ensure that Walibi would eventually earn so much cultural notability to the point of receiving an actual fan base over the coming years. What do you do to keep onlookers and fans engaged with your creation? That's right, you create depth. It was actually a prime goal of the original developers to weave Walibi into a storyline.
Le nœud de tout le projet, c'est de savoir si nous étions capables de créer une histoire fondatrice, des personnages assez forts pour que de cette histoire découle tout le reste.
This means that all of the characters, all of the personas that were mentioned so far had their own lore and their own personality with its positives and its negatives. To give you an example, Walibi is brave, energetic and usually of good humor, but unfortunately also gets quite impatient and naive. There's also a whole subplot that purely consists of Haas awkwardly falling in love and constantly simping for Phoebe. Okay! If you want to know everything about these characters and their personalities, I highly encourage you to check out this lovely forum post I linked in the description. I really like this one simply because of how Squad is described. Flaws: has countless. Qualities: barely has any. If you want to establish a true lore, however, you need more than just characters with strong and diverse personalities. What do you need to create a storyline? Well, a story, what else? And just like everything so far, the story is also quite complicated. For now, all you need to know is that the story acts as a prequel that explains the inception of the bands and how each band member got to know each other. It also establishes the rivalry between Walibi and Squad. There were also 3 additional characters that appeared in the story exclusively, the most notable one being Vida Dracovic, a stubborn but also heartful female dragon who apparently suffers from asthma and owns the Psyche, a popular concert venue where the Walibi Adventure Band would initially come together. This story would be told through 3 editions of comic books as well as a 4D movie. Named Rock and Roll, the movie could be watched in the park's own movie theaters, and has, as far as I'm concerned, become lost media. Other than the trailer show and some low-quality camcorder piracy footage, the full movie doesn't seem to exist on the internet anymore, which is honestly a shame because just like the songs, it looks really entertaining. But luckily, we're finally done talking about everything they added on the nymph of April 2011. Please don't look at the video length. But now that you know everything about the Walibi Adventure Band and the SkunX, you might want to know how they changed over time. Well, just like the original Walibi from the 1970s, the bands remained pretty much the same throughout their service, committing to their shows, their performances and their silliness. However, there were some other notable additions within the parks that were in relation with the Walibi bands. In fact, the logo and branding of the entire theme park chain was completely redone, now featuring Rockstar Walibi inside a big red W. On the interior, the parks were completely rethemed, now looking much more cartoony and livelier in appearance. However, the most exciting bit is that there were also roller coasters receiving this brand new cohesive theme. Most of them were Vekoma boomerangs added during the Six Flags days, who received new trains along with their retheme. However, one certain roller coaster stuck out among those who were rethemed, located in Wavre. The Rocker was a true classic, a Schwarzkopf shuttle loop coaster that opened in Walibi Belgium in 1982. And to say that this ride wasn't problematic is an understatement. In 1997, the ride suffered a very rare incident, where a malfunction of the ride's flywheel launch system caused the train to stall upside down in the ride's only inversion, due to balancing out. Crazy, huh? Following that, the ride reopened in 1999 under a new name and with parts of the ride, including the vertical loop, being enclosed to reduce noise. But shortly after, in 2009, the ride went SPNO, standing by but not operating. However, by the 2010s, park officials were looking forward to putting this historical beast back to life. And so, in 2013, the ride reopened as Psyche Underground. The roller coaster spikes were now also enclosed, making the ride a complete indoor experience. The ride now received a short pre-show before the launch, and speaking of, the original flywheel launch system was replaced with a linear induction motor system built by Gerstlauer. The flywheel launch mechanism can to this day be found as a set piece in the queue line. And finally, to coincide with the park's musical theme, the ride received an incredible soundtrack made by none other than Krenta Mosimann. Yes, the Walibi parks went the extra mile to hire a professional DJ to make the soundtrack for the new ride, and it was absolutely worth it. Alright, so to summarize everything we have seen so far, the Walibi Bands are the product of 3 Imagineers that dates back to 2006 and was introduced to all the Walibi branded parks in 2011. The whole package came with 2 rock bands of opposing genres fighting for glory, a completely fictional storyline that was told through comic books and movies, a wide variety of live shows, a whole retheme and redesign of both the parks and the brand itself, as well as multiple rethemed roller coasters, one of them being a rarity that was brought back to life. Now, you may be wondering, how long did all of this last? Given that they poured so much effort not only into the production of this, but also in getting the world to know about it, it surely must have lasted for quite some time, right? 5 years. Up until 2016. All of this, in its full form, lasted for just half a decade. In amusement industry terms, this is also known as a huge failure. From that year onwards, the number of mascots was slowly reduced. The progressive discontinuation varies a little bit between each Walibi park, but regarding Walibi Belgium, the first characters to go were all the secondary band members, Loco, Motif, Haas and Zenko. But even then they still couldn't make enough profit to fund Squaw's health insurance, so they dropped him too, meaning only Walibi and Phoebe were left. Jesus, this is like the Hunger Games here, with only 2 mascots left, no more shows could be hosted. The comic books were also taken off the shelves, and Rock'n'Roll was replaced with a new 4D cinema movie named Tempo Attack that only used Walibi and Phoebe as characters. Unfortunately, not even Phoebe was able to avoid the Grim Reaper's scythe, leaving only Walibi himself as the last man standing, as a lonely survivor who would go on greeting and entertaining all kinds of customers all by himself as he visibly degraded over time, eventually receiving a new head without a movable mouth, and I gotta say, holy shit, is it ugly? And finally, at the tail end of the 2019 season, Walibi would say goodbye to his final guests, before disappearing forever, never to return again. What I find very unfortunate though, is that we never received an official explanation for the removal of the Walibi Bands. From my entire research, I wasn't able to find a single statement, a single news post, not even a single announcement from Compagnie des Alpes regarding the removal of the Walibi Band cast. So to compensate, my theories include that the Walibi Bands just weren't generating a desirable amount of profit, especially if the amount of effort it took to develop and run it all in the first place is being considered. Plus, if you look at the amount of new roller coasters added between 2011 and 2016, you will find out that next to the rethemes of pre-existing roller coasters, there were no new additions. Meanwhile, in 2016, when the Walibi Bands began to be phased out, there were a whopping 3 new additions to the chain's parks. In fact, between 2016 and present day, a total of 8 new roller coasters were open to the public, with more to come in the future. I know about you guys, but to me this looks like a very severe change in business model, which makes sense if you think about it in regard to advertising. The general public is more attracted to new roller coasters rather than a group of mascots, as former is more intimidating but also more blatant. I mean, what is the first thing that comes up in everybody's mind when they think about amusement parks? That's right, disinterested faculty members. In the end, I personally find it a huge bummer that I missed out on that. This looks super cute and charming to me, and it would have made for a really fun time as well as really fun videos, I think. But also from a more objective standpoint, I think I've never seen any group of amusement park mascots with so much personality and thought put into them. Not just in the movies or comics they starred in, but mainly in live action form. Look at the crowd interaction, look at the acrobatics, look at the pure unbridled silliness. Not even Disney can hold up with that, at all. Furthermore, during that time, the Walibi parks were and still are the only parks in amusement history to be completely centered around music. And as a music enjoyer at heart, let's say that this doesn't make the loss any less sad. But how are the parks like nowadays? I mean, I was able to visit Walibi Belgium in July last year, so how did it feel like? Let's just say that it seems like nobody at Walibi Corporate liked that era. An active effort was made to remove as many references to that era as possible. The logo has been changed, the stages are now barely used, the 4D cinema now shows some generic western movie, the arena and Wavre now shows some generic tiki show, and if you get extra unlucky and arrive early to the place, you get greeted by easily the most generic and bland mascot I have ever seen. I swear, the time when you Walibi tried to desperately entertain the people at the front gate for 10 minutes straight was easily the lowest point of my life. I think you shouldn't have these at places designed for fun and amusement. Finally, the only major bits of Walibi theming left are the roller coasters, specifically of course Psyche Underground. The ride still remains a time capsule into the early 2010s for Walibi enthusiasts. And in my opinion, this ride easily has the best and most charming theming of any ride in the park, even beating Conda. Sure, you might call me biased, but I actually already felt that during my visit to Walibi Belgium in July, which is before I even knew that the Walibi Bands existed in the first place. Weird, isn't it? And unfortunately, the days of Psyche Underground might be counted too, at least in regard to its theming. It seems like also the roller coasters are getting their musical theming removed in favor of something generic, as in with Walibi Rhône-Alps Boomerang Equalizer in 2020. So with that, I will call out every Walibi Band fan, every nostalgist or childhood memory enjoyer to rewind Psyche Underground as many times as possible, as it is unknown how many times we can thrust ourselves back into the time when Walibi briefly became the leader of an iconic rock group.